Good afternoon, everyone. This is the January 9th, 2025 Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for the town of Chatham. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29th, 2023 signing of the Acts of 2023 extending certain COVID measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law until March 31, 2025, this meeting of the Chatham Zoning Board of Appeals is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided in the order. A reminder, people who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling 1-508-945-4410, conference ID 922-885-49#, or join the meeting online via the Microsoft Teams link on the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Chatham TV, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. In accordance with town policy, the public can speak to any issue on the business item agenda during the meeting when recognized by the chair. I'll just ask you at this point to please shut off any phones or items that make any noise whatsoever, if you would. And if anyone is going to speak during the meeting, just wait till you're recognized, and you have to walk up to the microphone and speak when you get there. The procedural steps start off with a roll call vote by our board members. We ask if anybody participating in the meeting by phone, just give their last 4 digits of their telephone and their name. The hearing notice will be read by our staff, Sarah Clark on my right, and you will present your appeal or your representative when you get up to the mic. And anyone in favor will then have an opportunity to speak for up to 5 minutes, and there'll be a time clock. After that, I'll read any letters that we got regarding that application. Then anybody that has a question or wants to speak against the appeal or application will have a chance to do that, again, for 5 minutes. Then we will have questions by the board, close the public hearing, and deliberate, and usually we vote. After that, we will take all votes by roll call, incidentally, and at the end of the meeting, we'll close via a verbal confirmation and note the time of adjournment. With that, if we could do a roll call vote and authorize this form of meeting, we'll start with David Veach.
Yes, David H. Veach, and I approve of this format.
Ed Acton, I approve.
David S. Nixon, I approve.
Paul C. Semple, I approve.
Lee Hovey, I approve.
Steve DeBoer approves.
Virginia Fenwick, I approve.
And Randy Potash, I approve as well. So looks like I think we have 2 meeting minutes to approve. Paul?
I think we do. First would be a training session meeting held on December 5, 2024. I'll move to approve those minutes as published.
Dave Veach seconds and
Is
votes.
there anybody that wants to comment on that? No? Okay.
Okay, I'll vote yes.
Yes.
Paul?
I vote yes.
Jenny?
I vote yes.
As do I. Okay, and then we have one more set, Paul.
Yes, a meeting held December 5, 2024. I'll move to approve those minutes as published.
Dave Veach seconds and,
Okay, any
sorry.
comment before we vote? No? Okay. You vote yes.
and I vote yes.
Yes.
Paul votes yes.
Ginny votes yes.
As do I. Okay, our first application is 24-138, Paul and Amy Marchetti, and whenever Sarah's ready.
Application number 24-138, Paul and Amy Marchetti, care of SV Design, 693 Main Street, Chatham, Mass. 02633. Owners of property located at 46 Henshaw Drive, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 14D, Block 43, Lot S9. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a conforming dwelling on a non-conforming lot via the construction of additions. The existing dwelling and proposed additions comply with all bulk and dimensional requirements of the bylaw, but is considered a substantial alteration, and under the second except clause of Section 6 of Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, such substantial alteration requires the grant of a special permit. The existing building coverage is 1,896 square feet, 11.5%, and the proposed building coverage is 2,207 square feet, 13.4%, where 15% is the maximum allowed. The lot is nonconforming in that it contains 16,485 square feet, where 20,000 square feet is required in the R20 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6, and Section 5B of the protective bylaw.
Welcome. If you could just state your name.
Good afternoon, Paul Muldoon here from SV Design, representing Amy and Paul Marchetti and their project at 48 Henshaw. Mr. Marchetti is on the call here with us today. So we're at 46 Henshaw, in R20 district. We have an undersized lot at 16,000 and change, where we need 20. Our frontage is at 98 feet, or a little over 98 feet, where 100 is required. Our existing and proposed structures all are zoning compliant. If we go to sheet A 2.0, you can see here we have on the south elevation, we have a modest one-story addition to the west, or the left side of the screen. That's about 285 square feet. The other improvements include an overhang on some brackets at the front entry, and we're developing the space over the existing garage by putting dormers on both the front and on the back. The windows, the shutters will all be upgraded as well. And if we can go to the next sheet. Here you can see the western view overlooking towards Oyster Ponds. So that set of bay windows in the new addition here, that looks directly over the neighboring property out to the view. And the rear elevation here, this is again, over the garage space. We're developing that space, adding a shed dormer across the back, and you're seeing the expanse of the western addition on the back side of the structure. Other improvements include a pool in the rear yard, some patio space, some landscape walls, and a shed that's less than 100 square feet. As Sarah mentioned, we're going from 11.5% building coverage to 13.4. And we have documented the building at 30 feet. The existing is 29.7. Our contractor is well aware of the stringent calculations and ensuring that our build and our final grading will be 30 feet or under. With that, I'm happy to go into the criteria.
Please do.
The adequacy of the site, the size of the site in terms of the proposed use. The existing non-conforming lot has less than required lot area. The bylaw allows us to go to 15% of building coverage. We're at 13.4. So we feel like the size of the site is adequate. Suitability of the site for the proposed use. There's no change in the proposed use to single-family residence in a single-family residential zone. There's no impact on traffic or safety with this minor work. The impact of the neighborhood and visual character, including views and vistas. The view and vista is towards the west, towards Oyster Pond, and our one-story addition is encapsulated by the shape of the existing structure. So we're not interrupting anyone else's views or vistas. And likewise, the visual character in the neighborhood, we're using cedar shingle siding, painted trim. We're upgrading the roof to a cedar roof. All materials and characteristics that you see in the neighborhood and throughout Chatham anyway. Adequacy of the method of sewage and disposal, source of water and drainage. There's no added bedroom count here, so no added sewage, and roof drainage will be taken care of on site. Adequacy of the utilities and other public services. There's no upgrade to the electric service, no upgrade to the water service. Noise and litter. No additional noise or litter will be created by the modest addition. Compatibility of the proposed with the surrounding land uses. We're in a single-family residential area surrounded by single-family residential homes. Impact on the natural environment, including slopes, vegetation, wetlands, and groundwater. There's no wetlands nearby, and there is a slope in the back, and there's existing retaining walls. We're simply pushing that retaining wall down gradient a little bit to accommodate the pool and create that flat bench. We have a wonderful landscape architect that'll help us manage any sort of runoff and waters along with that design. the visual impact on the neighborhood and the town visual character of any formula business establishment or single-family residential project. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody here or on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak in favor of this application? If so, please raise your hand, make it known. Seeing no one in the audience and no one on Microsoft Teams wishing to speak at all, I will read the correspondences, and there is one from our health agent, Judith Giorgio, from 1/7/2025. I have reviewed the proposed renovation. In addition to this property, the dwelling will maintain the existing three-bedroom floor layout. The property is connected to the municipal sewer, and no additional flow is planned. I have no concerns. That concludes our correspondences. Is there anybody here on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak against this application or has a specific question? If so, please make it known. Seeing none, are there any questions from the board? Seeing, yes, please.
I just have one comment, is when I was out at the property, it seemed to have never been staked out. I mean, it's pretty straightforward where the addition was going, but these are supposed to be.
My apologies.
Yep.
With the surveyor, there just must have been a miscommunication.
Well, we had the skills to figure it out, so,
Thank you.
all good.
I'm sure.
Yes, thank you. Okay, are there any other questions at this point? No. So, Paul?
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds and votes yes.
Yes.
Paul votes yes.
Ginny votes yes.
As do I. Okay, deliberations. Ginny?
Well, I think that the changes are modest. You did a great job with the presentation.
Thank you.
And the proposal is very nice. The improvements make sense, and I believe it meets all of our criteria.
Okay, and Steve? We'll just go right around.
Yeah, this, same thing, it's a nice project, it's within the setbacks, and I don't think it's affecting anything else around it.
Lee?
I agree. I think it looks really nice and meets our criteria.
And Paul?
Certainly agree with prior comments, and it's not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood.
Mr. Nixon?
I agree with the foregoing.
I as well.
As do I.
All right, well, that was easy. Paul?
I'll move to approve the application as submitted. What's your plan in terms of construction?
Straight away. We
All right.
expect we'll be enclosed before the season changes.
Okay, so our standard conditions should apply without any problems. All right, thank you. I'll add conditions that all construction activity and vehicles shall be contained on-site or at a neighboring property with the permission of the property owner. That between June 30th and Labor Day, no exterior construction will be allowed. No work shall be permitted on the weekends, and construction activity between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. only.
Dave Veach seconds and votes yes.
I vote yes.
All votes yes.
Ginny votes
As
yes.
do I. It's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you for
We'll
your
see you
time.
next time.
Cheers.
All right, our next application is number 24-144, Janine Colosi, care of Robert Vath, and this is 83 Diane Drive, whenever Sarah's ready.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Vath. I'm here representing Janine Colosi at 83 Diane Drive.
Bob.
Wait a minute.
1 second, I have to read the legal ad.
I'm sorry. It's in a little bit of a rush.
Put a pin in that, you know.
Application number 24-144, Janine Colosi, care of Robert Vath, 94A Commerce Park South, South Chatham, Mass. 02659. Owner of property located at 83 Diane Drive, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 6C, Block 68, Lot G128. The applicant proposes to change, alter, or expand a nonconforming dwelling on a nonconforming lot via the construction of an addition. The existing dwelling is nonconforming, and that it is located 22.2 feet from the road where a 25-foot setback is required. The proposed addition will conform to road and abutter setback requirements. The existing building coverage is 1,192 square feet, 15.8%, and the proposed building coverage is 1,242 square feet, 16.3%, where 15% is the maximum allowed. The lot is non-conforming, and then it contains 7,556 square feet, where 20,000 square feet is required in the R20 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6, and Section 5 via the protective bylaw.
Okay, Mr. Vath, I presume.
I'll try this again.
Very good.
My name is Bob Vath. I'm here representing Janine Colosi at 83 Diane Drive. The adequacy of the project, we plan on adding a 5x10 addition off of the south side, keeping everything within the setbacks. As far as the lot compatibility to the size of the structure, it is compatible with the rest of the neighboring homes. Like I said, a small, modest addition to accommodate enlarging a kitchen. The percentage that we're going up from 15.8 to 16.3. Can we look at the side view, the south view? Represented with the window location. The window location is basically the same. We're just pushing out that wall, like I said, to accommodate a kitchen. As far as the impact on scale of the neighborhood and visual character, you can't really see it from the street. It's on the side of the home. Compatibility of use. It's a kitchen addition, very small and modest, 5x10. It's still a 2-bedroom home, so no impact on the sewage or water, and impact on traffic flow and safety. It's a small project. There aren't going to be many construction vehicles there. It has a driveway and a fence that we can remove if we have to park on the front lawn.
Okay, that seems like enough for this particular project. Is there anybody here on Microsoft Teams that has the desire to speak in favor of this project? Please make it known if you do. Seeing none, I will read the correspondences. There are 4, 2 in favor and 2 from internal agency. 6. First, we have a note from our health agent, Judith Giorgio, on January 7th, 2025. She reviewed the proposed renovation and addition, and the dwelling will maintain a 2-bedroom floor layout. A new addition will not encroach on the existing septic, and she has no concerns. Then we have a note from the Conservation Commission, and the project will be conditioned to meet the performance standards in the near future, and they had a hearing on that. And next, we have a note from, and just for the sake of completion, that was on December 16th, 2024. Next, we have a note from Laurie Fromer, and she lives at 22 Diane, and they are writing in support of the project application, and they hope the ZBA approves the plan. Laurie and Jason Fromer, 22 Diane. And then lastly, we have a note from David and Elizabeth Renke, 57 Diane Drive, and they tell us on January 9th that it's a letter of support for a very modest addition proposed by Janine Colosi, and they have been terrific neighbors, maintaining the property with pride, and they wholeheartedly support the improvements without reservation. Is there anybody here on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak against this application or has a specific question? Seeing none. Are there any questions from the board?
I just have one question.
Okay, Paul?
Just to fill out my knowledge of what's going on. We've got these plans that have a circle S in red. What is that?
Smoke detectors.
Pardon me?
Smoke detectors. Smoke detector locations.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? No? All right, very good. Paul?
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
And Dave Veach seconds and votes yes.
Yes.
Paul votes yes.
Ginny votes yes.
As do I. Okay, deliberations. We'll start with Mr. Veach.
Minor, yeah, hardly even, it's not going to be noticeable from the street or the neighborhood at all. I will, it's certainly not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. It meets our criteria, and I will enthusiastically support it.
All right, very good. Ed?
I agree as well.
And Mr. Nixon?
Yeah, the only thing I don't like about it is, since it's already over the max, you're maxing out the max. And that doesn't make me wild about, but I understand this is a small project. And is it substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood? No, it is not.
Right. And Paul?
I agree with the prior comments.
And Lee?
I agree, too.
As do I.
And Ginny?
Yeah, I just want to echo what Mr. Nixon said. It's a 0.5% over. You're already over, but it's a 0.5% ask in building coverage. I think it's a great project, and I do think that even though you're over, that's why you're here, you're asking for that grace, and I think it meets our criteria.
Yeah. And I'll just echo that. Always gives us a red flag, just for anyone that watches, when we see that the property's already over, what's the limit, and then they want to go over the over. But in the great scope of this one, it's not an issue in my mind either. So, Paul?
I'll move to approve the application as submitted. I think our standard conditions would be appropriate in this neighborhood. So I'll move to add conditions that all construction activity and vehicles be contained on site or at a neighboring property with the permission of the property owner, that between June 30th and Labor Day, no exterior construction will be allowed, no work shall be permitted on the weekends, and construction activity between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. only.
Dave Veach seconds and votes yes.
Yes.
Paul votes yes.
Ginny votes yes.
As do I. It's unanimous. Congratulations.
Thank
Good
you.
luck. Thank you. All right. Moving right along to the third application, 24-139, Lloyd's of Chatham LLC, care of Joseph Amorisino, 52 Court Street. Whenever Sarah's ready, she will read the application.
Application number 24-139, Lloyd's of Chatham LLC, care of Joseph Amorisino, 141 Moffett Road, Waven, Mass. 02468. Owner of property located at 52 Court Street, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 12I, Block 24F, Lot H6. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a conforming dwelling in a non-conforming lot via the conversion of the existing garage to habitable space. The existing dwelling complies with all bulk and dimensional requirements of the bylaw, but is considered a substantial alteration, and under the second except clause of Section 6 of Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, such substantial alteration requires the grant of a special permit. Also proposed but not requiring a special permit is the addition of a conforming screened porch, the construction of a conforming pool house, swimming pool, and shed. The existing building coverage is 1,895 square feet, and the proposed building coverage is 2,320 square feet, where 2,900 square feet is the maximum allowed. The lot is non-conforming in that it has 100 feet of frontage where 150 feet is required, and contains 24,545 square feet where 40,000 square feet is required in the R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6, and Section 5B of the protected bylaw.
Hello and welcome. And if you want to just focus on the garage going to habitable space, it's a tough word for me for some reason.
I'm going to try and say that word, too.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
we'll see how
say
it
it 3
goes for
times
me.
fast.
All right, so good afternoon. We're seeking the special permit to convert an existing two-car garage into habitable space. Specifically, that's a hard word on top of habitable right there. It's a open floor plan kitchen family room space. The wall's wide open, and there's a large opening to gain access there, somewhere between 6 and 7 feet on the plan as you walk in there. The 12 criteria, number one, the adequacy of size and site, including but not limited to maximum lot or building coverage setbacks. There's no impact. This is a conversion of existing space in the garage. We're not extending the footprint or raising the roof. Number two, compatibility of the size of the proposed structure with neighboring properties. Again, it's a conversion, and the existing structure is very much compatible there on the cul-de-sac. It's one of the smaller homes on the street already, and will continue to be. Number 3, extent of the proposed increase in nonconforming nature of the structure of the use. Again, it's a conversion. I'm not sure that one doesn't apply. Suitability of the site, including but not limited to the impact on neighboring properties or on the natural environment, including slopes, vegetation, wetlands, groundwater, water bodies, and stormwater runoff, does not apply. Impact of scale, siting, mass on neighboring visual character, including views, vistas, streetscapes, there's no impact there. The garage is on the back of the property, too. It's not on the side. Compatibility of the proposed use with neighboring uses does not apply. Adequacy of the method of the sewage disposal, source of water and drainage, there's no changes there, no impact, still a 3-bedroom home. Impact of the traffic and flow of safety, no impact. We have an existing long driveway with enough space to park 4 cars at the top of the driveway and at least another additional 2 along the driveway, and a adequate opening at the bottom of the driveway to get out onto the street. Number 9, noise and litter does not apply. Adequacy of utilities and other public services, everything's good there. Visual impact on the neighborhood and neighboring uses of any formula business establishment, there's no impact there. And then number 12, for dwellings located in a floodplain, does not apply. Happy to answer any questions.
Oh, thank you very much. Is there anybody here on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak in favor of this application? If so, raise your hand. Seeing none, I will read the correspondences. First one is from our health agent, Judith Giorgio. She writes to us on January 7th, 2025, that she reviewed the proposed renovation in addition to the property. The dwelling will maintain the existing 3-bedroom floor layout. The proposed screen porch on sonotubes is at an acceptable setback to the existing septic tank, and she has no concerns. We have a note on December 27th, 2024, from Robert and Joyce Roth, and they're at 34 Court Street, and they say they're pleased to submit the letter in support of the new, for next-door neighbors, Joe and Tiffany Amorsino, in connection with their application. Thank you for your December 19th, 2020 public notice about it. Unfortunately, my wife Joyce and I can't come personally, but please accept this as sworn testimony for our legal record. We understand that the Amorosinos, who recently purchased the property next to us last summer, would like to improve it and renovate their new home. Although the existing dwelling complies with all the bulk and dimensional requirements, the proposed improvements to renovate the dwelling is considered a substantial alteration, and they need to come to the ZBA. They note their strong belief that the renovation work that's been discussed will be a significant benefit to the neighborhood. Proposed improvements will make the neighborhood more consistent with other well-kept single-family homes on their short cul-de-sac. A site visit by ZBA members will confirm my statement. And they just said, please consider our full support, and they're happy that their neighbors are, quote, fixing up the place. Sincerely, Robin and Joyce Roth. Next, we have a note from Attorney Litchfield, who I believe is going to speak. And so if I could, it's up to Attorney Litchfield if he wants me to read it or speak. Don't read it. Okay, not reading it. And that would be it. So, where am I? Is there anybody that wishes to speak against or has a specific question? And I will acknowledge Attorney William Litchfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bill
thank you.
Litchfield here on behalf of Ben McMahon. Not speaking against the proposal. Just wanted to clarify that. Mr. Amorsino and I have had a number of discussions. There was some inadvertent, overly exuberant clearing in the rear of the lot. And we have come to an agreement on behalf of my client and Joe, asking that the board include in its decision a simple condition and reference the plan that you have on file, and Mr. Amorsino is okay with that, as is Mr. McMahon. It'll resolve the differences between the parties. Thank you.
Very good, thank you so much. Is there anybody else that has a question, either here on Microsoft Teams or wishes to speak against this application? Please make it known. Seeing none. Any questions from the board on this one? Seeing none.
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds and votes yes.
Yes.
Paul votes yes.
Ginny votes yes.
As do I. Okay, Paul? Oh, we already did that. All right, deliberations. Mr. Veach.
Certainly not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. It meets the criteria. It's not going to be noticed at all with respect to the neighbors or neighborhood. So it's very easy to support this.
Okay, Ed, we might as well just go around.
Yeah, I feel it meets all the criteria, not detrimental to the neighborhood, so if I was voting, I would support it.
And Mr. Nixon.
Certainly not detrimental to the neighborhood.
And Paul?
I agree with the prior comments.
Lee?
As do I.
Steve?
As do I.
And I do,
Katie?
and I do too.
And I do too. So, at this point, Paul?
I'll move to approve the application as submitted, but I will ask, do we have a copy of the conditions, which we do?
Yes, we do.
Okay, then, given the neighborhood, is there a need for our standard conditions with respect to construction activity during the summertime and so forth?
It is a quiet cul-de-sac, and I would probably enforce them on myself, that I wouldn't want
All right.
construction going on the exterior of the property, other than typical, no heavy construction. Could they be doing some shingle work during normal business hours and not disrupt people? I suppose they could, because we're not on top of people there, but I would certainly want to be respectful and work within the typical hours
All
there.
right, well, why don't I'll move to approve the application as submitted with the condition that all construction activity and vehicles shall be contained on site or at a neighboring property with the permission of the property owner. That between June 30th and Labor Day, no exterior construction will be allowed. No work shall be permitted on the weekends and construction activity between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. only. And then thirdly, that substantial vegetative screening at least 6 feet in width, approximately as shown on a sketch plan prepared by Flagship Landworks dated January 6, 2025, shall be installed and maintained to ensure survival for at least 1 year by the applicant along the westerly rear property line of the premises being the common boundary with 582 Crowell Road and with permission of the owner of 582 Crowell Road, including on the area denoted as, quote, area of over clearing, unquote.
Okay, Dave?
David seconds and votes yes.
Nixon?
I vote yes.
All vote yes?
Ginny votes yes.
As do I. It's unanimous. Congratulations. Good luck. All right. Next, we have 24-140, Cynthia Waters, care of William F. Riley Esquire, and this is about 48 C Mist Lane, whenever Sarah is ready.
Application number 24-140, Cynthia Waters, care of William F. Riley Esquire, P.O. Box 707, Chatham, Mass. 02633. Owner of property located at 48 Seamus Lane, also shown in the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 1A, Block 20J, Lot X10. The applicant proposes to change, alter, expand a non-conforming dwelling in a non-conforming lot via the demolition of the existing dwelling and the construction of a new dwelling. The existing dwelling is non-conforming and that it is located 14.5 feet from the southerly abutter. The proposed dwelling will be non-conforming, located 14.5 feet from the southerly abutter where a 15-foot setback is required. The existing building coverage for the 10 dwellings is 9,102 square feet, 11.2%, and the proposed building coverage is 9,263 square feet, 11.4%, where 10% is the maximum allowed. The lot is non-conforming in that it has 10 dwellings where 1 dwelling is allowed. The lot contains 81,358 square feet in an R20 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6, and Section 5B of the protective bylaw.
Gentlemen, welcome. Please state your names and give your case.
Good afternoon, Bill Riley on behalf of Cynthia Waters.
You had Chris Cannon, architect, Arch 33, Cynthia Waters.
So this is a project, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Standish Village condominiums, but they were built back in the 1950s. a total of 10 cottages. All but 3 have been significantly renovated. Several have been demolished and rebuilt. Essentially what Chris has designed fills in a 150-foot section of where the existing cottage, they square off the backside of the existing cottage, basically. And then they add a second floor. I know you've been down to the neighborhood, so you can see that, several of the buildings are very substantial. Ours is going to fall into that category as well. I think one thing to keep in mind is that we are sort of in a low point on the property, and we don't believe that the addition of the second floor is going to create problems with views or vistas. We do have some correspondence from our neighbors to the east that they have no objection to our proposal. I'd like Chris to explain how he accomplished the goals set for him by the client, Cynthia Waters. Chris?
So we have currently a one-story, 3-bedroom house, and the house built 5-6 feet below the street. The parking currently is actually sitting on an easement. There's a 5-foot easement on the south end of the property, and there's one sole parking spot. So if you did go out there, I'm going to bet most of you probably parked in the street, as I always do when I've gone there. My goal initially was to lift the house a little bit, lift the soil around it, get it closer to where we can get the cars legal, get 2 cars, get them off the street, and to elevate the house to a point where it's a little bit more reasonable and not set way below the street. In doing so, also, it allows for a basement that can be walked out with a little bit of carving out of the soil down there. And my client wanted to have a second floor, and she wanted to continue having 3 bedrooms. So was willing to put one of those bedrooms in the basement, if need be. And she wanted to have a fair amount of living at the first floor, kitchen, dining, laundry. So, I tried to carve away at the house to try and make it not look like a 3-story house, because that's one of the problems that you get into when you have a hillside as steep as this. From the street side, I think, you have a fairly successful 1.5-story looking home. It does meet the height criteria for the lot. I think we've been working on this for about a year and working with the trustees of this association, and I think we've come to a pretty nice house. If I can answer any questions, happy to.
We'll get to that when there's time for questions, and Mr. Riley knows the drill.
All right, thank you. So I think, so one of the important things is that keep in mind because the plans, looks like a big house on the plans. The first floor living area is only 948 square feet. So even though, it's significantly larger than the existing structure, it's still a small home. So I'd just like to run through the criteria. So adequacy of the size of the site in terms of the size of the proposed use. We're only adding 153 square feet of building coverage. One of the reasons we're here is that, lot coverage is not to exceed 10%, but we're at 11%, and we're going up 0.2% with this change. The existing building doesn't meet the southerly setback. It's 14.5 feet, where 15 feet is required. We did ask the trustees if we could move the building a little north so we could be in compliance. and they told us they would prefer that we stay in the exact location we are now, so that nonconformity is going to continue. But other than that, we meet the other setbacks. The compatibility of the size of the proposed structure, prepared our normal sheet on the back, and because we have a full basement, and some of the other buildings do not, or have just a crawl space, we are, one of the larger buildings in the neighborhood. We're the largest in our 10-unit condominium by a small amount. But I think that you could find that the building's compatible with the overall neighborhood if you drove around it all. The increase in the non-conforming nature, because we've extended the southerly line of the house, where right now there's only a 15-foot section, now it's essentially a 30-foot section, that it doesn't meet the setback, so that's an increase in nonconformity. We're going from 11.2% building coverage to 11.4%, so that's an increase in nonconformity as well. And we're increasing the living area, which of course is an intensification of a nonconformity. The suitability of the site, including but not limited to impact on neighboring properties or on the natural environment, including slopes, vegetation, wetlands, groundwater, water bodies, and stormwater runoff. So the property that is down gradient of this belongs to the applicant. So that's 46. This is 48. Her house is 46. So we don't have a concern necessarily about neighboring properties. The properties to the south are protected by a buffer strip and a very heavily vegetated growth. If you've been down there, you've seen that. And then they have a driveway that runs along the northern edge of their property as well. So we think that in terms of the impact on adjacent properties, that the site is suitable for the proposed work. Impact of scale, siting, and mass on the neighborhood visual character. Given that this property is at the low end of, given this building is at the low end of the property, not the lowest because Ms. Waters' existing home is the lowest. We think that even though we're raising the ridge substantially, we're not having any negative impact on views and vistas. We think the streetscape, we think it's an improvement because we think Chris did a great design. So we believe that although there are changes, we don't think any of them are substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing structure. And, it's a single-family cottage. All those cottages down there are generally available for seasonal rental. Although Ms. Waters lives year-round in her house at 46. Septic systems remaining the same. No significant impact on traffic flow and safety. Actually, as Chris pointed out, there's actually an improvement because now we're going to have 2 parking spaces off the roadway surface. So we think that'll be an improvement. And no impact on noise and litter. So we believe that the project could be approved because we believe that it's not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing structure. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody here on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak in favor of this application? Please indicate. Seeing none, I will read the correspondences. There are 6. First, we have a note from Judith Giorgio, our health agent, on January 7th, 2025. She reviewed the proposed plan. It will not increase sewage flow at the property. A full-size plan showing the location of all septic systems in the construction area will be needed to confirm offsets from the new dwelling to existing condominium systems and location of connection to system for this unit. We have a note from Christina Bassett, who represents the Historic Commission, and she tells us this home just turned 75 years old on January 1, 2025, and it needs to be reviewed by the CHC, and there has not been an application there yet.
We missed the birthday.
Well, we'll get to that later, I'm sure. Next, we have a note from Lou and Lisa Terranova, and they tell us on January 4th, 2025, they live at 24 Seamist, and they're in support of the application. We have a note also from Pam Parsons, who resides at 57 Seamist Lane, and that came in on December 30th, 2024. She also supports the building plan, and design is appropriate for the area in keeping with 75 and 60 next door to them. She's across looking at 48 and 75, and it will add charm to the area, and it's a better fit, according to her, than was allowed at 75 and 60 Seamist. Then we have a note from Jan and Bob Pierce, 40 Seamist Lane, on January 4th, 2025. They appreciate being informed of the application, and they do not object. Next, we have a note from William Flynn, Tiffany Hubanks, and David Tadge, Standish Village Condominium Trustees. That came in on January 8th, 2025. By way of introduction, we are the current trustees of Standish Village Condominium Association. We understand the application requesting the approval for demolition and rebuild of 48 Seamist. We have no objection to the project on its face. There is current procedural matters that is delaying association approval. The Standish Village Condominium Master Deed includes the subject property and provides that any exterior change, addition, structure requires express consent in writing by the trustees. The unit owners recently approved 150 square foot easement for a common property. The third amendment to the master deed is awaiting approval from Land Court and registration with the Barnstable Registry of Deeds. The third amendment was created and approved by the unit owners for the avoidance of doubt on this point. An approval granted on the subject property in advance of the approval and registration of the third amendment would be in violation of the master deed, as would be negatively impact the owner's percentage of ownership to common property. We do not want to hold up the permitting process. And we respectfully ask that the Zoning Board of Appeals condition any approval on the recording of the third amendment and final approval of the Board of Trustees, which requires review and approval of stormwater management, hardscaping and landscaping, and timing of construction activities. Please acknowledge this note. And then they have also attached what they were talking about. And that concludes the correspondences. Is there anybody here on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak against this application or has a specific question? Yes, one at a time. I'll take the gentleman with the white sweatshirt. Please do. Please go right up there. Everything is recorded on that microphone, so that's why it's required that you go up there. And just state your name and please go ahead.
My name is Ronald Marino. We're at 37 and 49 Seamist Lane. We are the abutters to the east of the project. We've all known Cindy Waters all our lives, have no problem. It's our intention to be a good neighbor. We wish Cindy well and hope that she gets a nice house. However, the house that's proposed will in every way have a significant impact on the views and vistas. It was just presented that this will be a slightly larger home than the others. This is going to be monumental. It's going to be like a giant water tower compared to all the others. When it was stated earlier that most of the homes in that 10-unit group have already been enlarged, they may have been modified or renovated, but I would bet 95% of them still sit in their original footprint, left to right, north to south, east to west, so the overall square footage on its common portion of their lots is still the same. This one, however, will be enormous. Mr. Riley indicated that himself that this one will be significantly larger. To go and say that it will have minimal impact on the views and vistas is completely inappropriate for this house. The house itself is beautiful. I would love to have that house. However, that house is going to go up right in front of our house, directly in front of our house. We currently have a beautiful view of Nantucket Sound and the Harwich beaches. That'll be completely gone. I don't mean 50% gone. I mean all of it will be gone. They want to take the house that's there, knock it down, and then they want to fill the land. The architect, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, said, well, we're going to fill it a little bit and raise it a little bit. No, we're going to fill it and we're going to raise it 12 feet. That's bigger than one story. So we now have that 3-story house, that exact house that he tried not to design. That's what they're going to put there, and you can see it from the drawings. Again, we're not trying to prevent or prohibit Cindy from getting a new home. It'll be great for the neighborhood, it'll be great for everybody, just not that big. And in front of us, we might as well put up a giant billboard and paint it black. We won't have any more view. We'll have no sunsets. To the left is a tree line. To the right is the upper portion. I'll be quick. Our concern is the view and our loss of the view of Nantucket Sound. We've owned our house now. My wife and I are now second generation owning that house. One of our 2 sons is here. He's third generation. We don't intend to sell the house. We have people call us all the time because we have 2 houses on one parcel. We don't intend to sell. Cindy indicated to me she's going to flip the house. She's going to build this big thing and then flip it. Good for her. Hope she makes a ton of dough. But, you know, it's not like I'm getting with Cindy and saying, geez, you can have this beautiful home and you're going to live here with your kids. No, she's just going to flip it. We're going to lose all of our view. You know, we had this issue before with all these little dog houses that keep popping up on the corner of a house. That was an issue 25 years ago. We all got over that and we learned to live with the little dog house. Now we've grown out of the dog houses and now we're going to knock the whole thing down and we're going to bring it up a little bit and we're going to go a little bit taller. A whole nother story. When they say that they're in compliance at 30 feet, my question is that in compliance at 30 feet from the existing grade today or from the filled grade proposed? I don't know that answer.
Just so you know, sir, you have 35 seconds left.
All right. From there, I'm going to leave it to the others in the group.
Okay, very good, very good.
Thank you.
I will acknowledge them. But actually, I didn't call on you yet, sir, so just wait a minute. After he sits down, we're going to announce again, and then I will do my thing. So is there anybody else here or on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak against or has a specific question? If so, raise your hand. Very good. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, my name is Ross Marino. Again, I am residing at 47 Seamus Lane and 35 and 37 Seamus Lane. Again, I would just like to reiterate the fact that I am going to be a third-generation owner. I intend to have kids of my own here, and I want to share the same memories that I was able to make at this house as well. And if this house were to go up, it would block our view of the sun in the afternoon portion. It would be very detrimental for being able to sit outside, enjoying dinners. But I also think that it's going to pose an issue to the view of the neighborhood. The other gentleman over here, I forget your name, I'm sorry, had mentioned that the other houses had also been brought up before to grade with the street. After stopping by this afternoon and taking a look, the other houses were not. Throughout the neighborhood, we've also had issues with flooding issues, so we've had barriers put up along property lines to prevent flooding away. And I think that I don't see a need why they need to bring their house to grade when everybody else in their proximity has not. I think that's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else here on Microsoft Teams that wish to speak against or has a specific question? Yes, ma'am. Just state your name and your case.
I am Sarah Marino. I have lived at 37 and 49 Seamus Lane, actually since I was 3. The neighborhood I've seen before, it was owned by one person. Originally, I know when my dad had owned the property, it was told that the houses could not go up any further than they already were. Things change, bylaws change, I understand that. Of course, we want our property values to go up because who doesn't want that? And, you know, I wish all of my neighbors well. It's not that I dislike any of them. However, I feel as though this project is going to significantly affect our view, the neighborhood. It's going to be, honestly, if they bring it up to grade, that's where the door is. We're going to be looking out our picture window at their front door. And we're going to be having, you know, dinner on our deck directly right across from their parking lot. Parking is needed. That's a big thing for this neighborhood. We've had several issues, not with Cindy, but the prior owners. When there were rentals, they would park on the street, and we couldn't even make the swing into our driveway. So that would be great to have off-street parking. But again, if we're going to bring all of that up, does the house necessarily need to go up with it? Because again, where are we starting from? Are we starting the height from, you know, below grade, or are we going to lift it and now we're going to go another, you know, a 30-foot? That's a lot. We're a single floor home where we're at, so I'm a little concerned about that. Obviously, the neighborhood is a summer rental community. We have several weeks rented already for next summer. And so, you know, having noise and whatnot at that time of year, you know, that would be of a concern too. Again, I'm not opposed to changes being made or even the footprint of the house changing, but it's just the height of the house I really do have an issue with. And I think that's probably, you know, probably the biggest, our
Thank you for
concern.
coming. Very good.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else here on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak against or has a specific question about this application? If so, raise your hand. Going once? Nope. Okay. So at this point, we will go with questions from the board. David Nixon.
Excuse me.
Oh, wait, yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Riley, you need to, your rebuttal time. Yes.
Thank you very
I apologize.
much.
I always forget that part.
I appreciate the concerns of the Marinos, but, you know, we've only brought the top of foundation up 2 feet. So I mean, right now, the existing top of foundation is 33.53, and the proposed top of foundation is 35.93. So 2.5 feet. So I think that, you know, the characterization the things aren't as bad as the Marinos have made them sound, at least in our opinion. I understand their concerns about their view, and as you know, we had a Supreme Court case that dealt with views, In that instance, it was determined that the views that are protected by our bylaw are neighborhood views and not the views of a single property owner. So the, we think the changes are reasonable and would ask that you approve it. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
No? Okay, thank you so much. So now we're going to go with questions from the board. I'm going to start with David Nixon.
Chris, let's talk about the height, if we can, please.
Yeah.
And I just heard what Mr. Riley said, but if we're comparing the height of the ridge today with the height of the ridge you designed, what is the difference?
I don't have the exact difference on that. Let's see.
About 12 feet. It's about
Top.
12 feet.
Is it about 12?
Yeah.
So 12 feet, correct?
Right.
Okay, all right. When you designed the house, and I think you said the owner wanted to keep the number of bedrooms at 3, and it's just that she wanted expansion for the different things, and as Mr. Riley put in here, it's a rental, so I presume this enhances the value of the rental, the more space and all that kind of stuff. Did you design a home for her that wasn't 12 feet higher, that she rejected, or you didn't feel answered her needs?
I started basically by trying to, as I spoke earlier about, I tried to get the parking so that was reasonable. It's 2 feet beneath the road, so there's still going to be runoff coming onto this lot from the road as there currently is. So I kind of started there to try and get a reasonable front yard so it wasn't 5 feet below the street. And she had always wanted a second floor, so it kind of worked together. Now, I initially lifted the house 3 feet. We dropped it down at the request of the trustees to the point where I think it was 2.5 feet. I could technically drop it down by a little bit more. Ultimately, if I drop it down another foot, I don't know if that really helps the argument that's being made. The house is sitting on the same footprint, except that we're filling in this 12'6" by 12-foot area, as other people within the condominium complex have done. And that was where the 150 square feet came from that the trustees bind us to. So, so we started with filling that in and then adding the second floor. And, I did my best to erode the front so that it did not have the appearance of being a really big house. I think by any other measure, it probably isn't a very big house, but it does sit on a hillside, but that hillside's on the opposite side of the house from there. So they're not perceiving that. They're perceiving the 1.5-story house on their side. So did I look at any other way of approaching it? No, I always looked at having a second floor. It's just a question, is it 1 foot lower than where it currently is, or is it where it currently is?
Mr. Riley, in your analysis that you submitted to us, if I read this right, the gross floor analysis, that the proposed house is 350% larger than the current house. Is that correct?
That's because we have to include the basement in our calculation. But yeah, the math is the math.
Yeah, no, I understand, but the math is correct. My math is
The
correct.
math is consistent. So the size as proposed by us of the gross floor area is consistent with the gross floor areas of most of the other homes in the condominium. That's why it was approved by the trustees.
Okay, well, I don't have any other questions at this time. Thank you.
Ginny, questions?
Chris, what is the height of the ceilings in the second floor?
In the second floor?
Second floor, well, first floor too.
Second floor is, I show an 8 foot. First floor, I show an 8'2". if it, again, it's kind of like dropping the first floor. I can drop it a foot. I could drop each of those 4 inches. Ultimately, it doesn't achieve much of a goal. This house is, well enough under the 30-foot that we're, allowed to work with in Chatham. I don't know that your perception of the house would change dramatically if I did that. Maybe with the 1 foot dropping the first floor, I can do that, but the rest of it, I'm not sure it makes much of a difference.
Well, let's talk about the height. I'm seeing 2 different numbers. On your REG 2, I see 28.85, and on the application, the number, on
The proposed on the application is 28.9, and I showed 28'10", which is 28.9.
okay. On this ad, then, it says 28.2, so I
Oh, I
wanted
don't know.
to. So it's a foot and a few inches from the maximum?
Yes.
Okay.
And by the way, the proposed and the existing grade planes are 0.3 foot off of each other. The initial grade plane as existing is 31.1, and the proposed is 30.8, so it's a little bit
Okay.
lower.
So can you also go to REG 6? And I'm looking at the north elevation, because that is what you're going to see when you're driving down towards the house from the beginning of the lane, correct?
Correct.
And it does look like a 3-story house because of the windows that you see, the basement level windows that you see. Now, this part in the front where the steps are, is that what you're talking about, where you're filling in that grade so that it's better, it's more at street level?
Yeah, I'm filling in basically just in front of the house.
To get that driveway?
To get that so that it's 2 feet below the street.
But that is a visual, I believe, in supporting what the neighbors were talking about with respect to, we're raising the grade, and then we're building the house, this larger, taller house on top of that. That's,
Well,
we're not disputing that.
Well, that's correct, but, the idea is you don't want driveway water running up against the foundation, so naturally you keep,
Yeah,
but as Chris has pointed out, we didn't raise the grade of the yard up to the street level. We're still going to receive runoff from the street.
okay.
I mean, the implication was that we were elevating the structure unreasonably, and all Chris did was bring it up so we could have some parking spaces. We're still below the street level.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I can't solve the problem of parking unless I do this.
Yeah.
And so if I go 3 feet down, I can't get a ramp to it. So 2 feet down was what I thought was reasonable to get a ramp down at both ends of the property. And they allowed me, I think, 14 feet from the edge of the house, and that was the furthest I could go for a curb cut. So, this achieves getting the car off of the easement, which it shouldn't be on to start with, and it gets the second car off the road.
So
And
kind of,
if I could just make one point with regard to, so the house is 28.9 from the grade plane, okay? The grade plane is 2 feet below the street level. The Marino's property is somewhat elevated from the street. Our proposed use of the property is reasonable. If we brought the grade plane up to the street level, I could understand why they might say, well, you're being unreasonable, you're filling right up to the top but we're not even doing that. We're still 2 feet below the street level.
well, your existing home is more than 2 feet below the street level, so you're making that improvement. I want to touch on what Mr. Nixon was asking Chris, with respect to, and, what you can share with respect to what the homeowner wants. I think it's true and great that the parking would be a much desired improvement, and I think you started there. And so a second story is a desire too. Was there any discussion about maybe you can't have both? Like, how about a 1.5 story or something like that? Because you're solving the parking, which makes a lot of sense, but you're raising things to solve that. And then on top of that, you're adding a full second story.
Actually, we're not. Actually, it's a 1.5-story building. By Chris's definition. I mean, he's the architect, not me. I'm just a lawyer.
I mean, that's 1.5, would you say that's 1.5 stories?
On the other side is what I said. On this side, it presents as a 2.5, I suppose. We've carved out the soil at the base to allow a door. Again, I can drop the whole thing a foot. The basement is more than 50% in the ground. So by definition, I don't even think it's a basement. I think it's a cellar, technically. But semantics. But yes, this is a 2.5-story on this particular side, on the west side. On the sides, I mean, the ground slopes off. There's not much I can do about that. We did not change the grades on the side.
Yeah.
And again, where we're starting from is the living area on the first floor is 960 square feet.
There's no basement today, no cellar.
No, there's a basement, but I'm saying the living area on the first floor is only 964 square feet. It's not like we're talking about a 2,000 square foot first floor and a building on top of it. 964 square feet.
Right, it's a cottage.
It's a cottage.
Yeah. And, well, I don't want to get into deliberations yet. I have one more question. I want to talk about the letter that the trustees wrote. And I know we've got some attorneys on our board here, but is there no concern about the comment that current procedural matter delaying the association approval and an approval granted for this property in advance of the approval and registration of the outstanding Third Amendment would be in violation of the master deed? Is any concern there for that?
Actually, no. So actions of the zoning board have no effect whatsoever on real estate rights. And the concern, the real concern of the trustees is that work not be begun on the project, physically on the project, until the Board of Trustees has voted to approve it. You know, with regard to drainage, and they mentioned a couple of other things. And in speaking with our building commissioner, or at least my understanding of what the building commissioner's position is that, well, first of all, we wouldn't start construction without having approval from the trustees. Because that's a violation of the condominium. So we're not going to do that. My understanding is that the building permit wouldn't be issued until we have a vote of the trustees, so that you know, the town staff is not concerned about it. And you know, and one of the things they also ask for is that your decision be conditioned on their approval.
Yeah.
And that's an abdication of your responsibility and really completely inappropriate. You know, the reality is, we're going to comply with the condominium association requirements. Part of the problem is, if I can tell you a little story.
Can we not do little stories?
no
'Cause
more
it's
stories,
questions
but-
and answers. How
but
about
the-
if I
but the
just
problem is
clarify that our building commissioner is not going to give you a permit until all the
Right.
requirements are satisfied?
Yeah, and we also have
And
to
you
go to
need to come to
historic,
us
too.
first before you go to your condo association,
Right.
I just
and you are here.
To make sure that this wasn't out of sequence.
No,
what
it's
we
not.
should- Okay.
Nope.
That was the
Yeah,
question.
good, excellent. Dave Veach, questions?
I just want to, I'm getting more confused, the more numbers that get tossed around. So just to clarify, Chris, did the grade plane proposed is lower than the existing grade plane was, or slightly higher?
0.3 foot lower.
.3 feet lower
Lower.
than the existing
The
grade plane?
existing.
Okay.
I think that's a product of the fact that, because they're elevated one side, the other side is,
And I'm going to let our building commissioner, if that's okay,
Oh.
Mr. Riley?
sure.
He indicated he wanted to comment.
Whereas height is such an issue, I want to say, in addition to the 30-foot height requirement we have a 2.5-story height requirement. And when I look at these plans, it looks like they might have to do some additional grading so that the basement level is not considered a story and this is not considered a 3-story home. But to the point you were making about the building permit, we require, in a condominium association, we require a letter of approval from the association before we release the building permit. So that wouldn't be an issue.
No, very good. Go ahead, Mr. Veach.
Okay. And the other thing that I'm looking at the maps online situation here and the grade contours. And I'm trying to get it, because I'm trying to get a sense. And it shows, it appears to show that in this area, I would say maybe the elevation of the street is somewhere around elevation 38. Excuse me. And when I look then on the other side at the property at 37 and 49, I'm seeing contours at 42 and 40 and up to 44 feet on that property. I don't know if there's anybody here that can confirm that or not. I'm just wanting to make that statement, that what I'm seeing on the contour maps.
I mean, I can't confirm them without a map of the houses next door,
Yeah.
but I can tell you they're well elevated.
It
above
is
this house.
elevated.
Yes.
We're going uphill.
Yes.
Certainly as we get to the street, and beyond the street, the grade is increasing.
Yes.
To the homes on the other side.
Yes.
Of the street, okay. And you've said that, you might be able to change the floor level by a foot or so and still accomplish what you sought to accomplish with the parking and all, et cetera. Without other changes, correct me if I'm wrong, but that would mean that the change in the ridge elevation would be a foot less. So instead of 12 feet, it would be like 11 feet.
Yeah, I could make that work. I mean, I can shelf the foundation in a way that I can do that. We don't typically start there.
Yeah, but you're saying, I think what you're presenting is that, yes, you could do that, but you're not convinced that that's really going to significantly change the appearance or perceived appearance.
Correct.
From the
Unless
other
you're
side.
looking up over the top of the house, I don't know that it really helps you.
Yeah.
And yes, are you looking up over the top of it if it's a one-story? Perhaps, but at two-story, no.
Yeah, okay. I think that's all I have, thanks.
Very good. Ed, questions?
I guess I'll try and test Bill's history here. I assume, were all of these just one-story cottages at one point?
Yes, in fact, this cottage, which was owned by a guy named Norbert Kelly, who was really a fabulous guy, this is absolutely original, completely unchanged. I actually represented Miss Waters' sister, who owned 46, back in 2005 when I'm not certain that was the first change down there, but I do know that because we were expanding the footprint, we were going over and the coverage was already over 10%, we had to come here for a special permit. And so, so they all looked more or less exactly like this cottage looks today.
Yeah. And number 18, I imagine. 18 looks to be the only other one that's a single story still. If
No,
my notes are correct.
there's at least two.
Yeah, there's two.
Others.
This one, and I believe number 18 is a single story as well.
I mean, I think there's a total of three that haven't been modified,
Okay,
and this is one,
of the 10.
yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
We already went to Mr. Nixon, we're going to Paul. Questions?
Do you have any, anything that would give us a perspective of the building as proposed, looking at it from the road with other buildings around it? Would give us some feel for what it's going to look like in the neighborhood?
I don't have anything.
I mean, I don't, unlike other houses in the neighborhood, this one's already set down several feet. Most of them, either you're looking laterally at them, or you're looking up at them. And most of them are two-story. In this condominium complex, everything across the street is elevated anyway. This one's unique. It's, as I've said, it's about 5 feet below the street, so, and it's pretty unusual, and not too many people want to live 5 feet below the street. So, we kind of started there by trying to get it to a reasonable elevation, and still at 2 feet. I typically wouldn't design a house 2 feet below the street. I typically try to put it up above the street, but not in this case.
And the whole back side of the house, in effect, the three-story side, is not seen from the road. And it reflects on 46 as opposed to 48.
That's correct.
Okay, I have no other questions.
All right, very good. Lee, questions?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm not an architect. I think this house is very attractive. Is there anything that can be done to the second floor to decrease the mass? I mean, the second floor is lovely. There's 2 bedrooms, large bedrooms, and a room for a lounge. I don't know, just throwing it out there as any.
Well, I think I eroded the front about as much as I could to get what I was asked to get in it. That was my ultimate goal, was to really erode the front, the part that was going to face people outside of the condominium complex. The back, I was a little bit less concerned with that because I knew it looked out onto a house that my client owns. Other people within the complex don't seem to mind it. But, again, I can drop the house a foot. I just don't think ultimately it really achieves the goal. It has the appearance of being a 2.5, 3-story because we carved out where the door needs to be. Otherwise, it's in the ground and absolutely a 2.5-story.
And I'd point out that the second floor living area is only 914 square feet. So, I mean, I appreciate your concern, but it's really a small cottage.
Okay, any more, Lee? Any more questions? No? Steve, go for it.
Do you have any sort of calculation for the height at the rear of the house from, let's say, the basement floor to the ridge?
I think that's really a question from Jay, maybe.
Mr. Building Commissioner, do you happen to know that?
I did not look at that.
No? Okay,
No, I'm still looking at the story thing, and
yeah.
for a 2.5-story house, half stories only apply to the uppermost floor or the uppermost story. It doesn't apply to the lower story. So, like I said, I think there's some grading that needs to be done to prevent that basement level from becoming a story, by definition in the bylaw.
So what we have before us now, how would you characterize it?
Well, as it is right now, I think it's a 3-story, but I think that with minimal grading, they can achieve 2-story.
Okay, good to know. Steve?
All right, because I ask because I'm concerned that from the rear of the house, that's potentially, if the ridge if the ridge from the front of the house is at almost 30 feet, if you look at the back of the house, the ridge of the house is going to be 40 feet.
No.
We measure from the grade plane.
I understand that, but
Okay,
what
so
I'm,
the grade plane includes the rear of the house as well as the front of the house.
I know, but if
Okay.
if I'm standing in the yard of number 46,
Can I just stop you there? It's not 40 feet. It's 28 foot 10, and that's about 2.5 feet above the slab of the cellar. So, 31 feet maybe. But the thing is that the grade around the back of the house, in much of the house, is already at the, basically at the median grade plane. So it's going to be somewhere about 30 feet is what the back of the house would be.
I'm going to call on our building commissioner.
I just checked it on the site plan, and it's 31.4 feet on the back from the grade to the ridge.
okay, thank you. All right, because that's what the folks behind it are going to see. Whether or not the owner lives there now, that probably is not going to be in perpetuity. So that was the only concern that I have, because that is going to look like a massive wall in their backyard.
Okay,
That's it.
very good. So that was your question. So I have a question. Is your last name Marino? I think just nod your head. It doesn't matter, one of the three of you, if you could approach the mic, I have a question. Thank you, sir. Just state your name.
My name is Ross Marino.
Okay, so, Mr. Marino, your family owns two houses, correct?
That's correct.
And would you characterize the view that you think is going to be impaired from both of those houses?
I would say so, yes.
Yeah? And you're very familiar with the neighborhood?
Yes.
And would you be able to state whether or not any of the other neighbors are going to have impaired views?
Yes, we have neighbors to the right of us, the McLaughlins, and there are neighbors behind us as well that I would imagine their view would also be obstructed.
And when you say you imagine it, is you've been there near their house and you know that you're very familiar with the area?
Yes, yeah. The master bedroom on the second floor of our house is directly in front of their view behind us.
So what
at
does
the
that
same
make,
height.
4 houses that are going to have an impaired view?
Yes.
Yeah, do you think there's any more?
I mean, there are also a number of houses near the Tides Motel, the street behind us, that also, I would imagine, have views of Nantucket Sound from that height.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that.
Am I able to add one thing? I believe that.
No, you're not.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
I'm pretty strict, so I have,
Madam Chair,
yes.
I'm glad we have Ross's imaginings, but, to suggest that because he thinks there may be some impairment of views from the properties behind them.
I don't think he just imagined it, he's been
He just
there.
said,
and-
I
yeah.
imagine.
And then when I qualified that imagination from his personal experience. So I think
Well,
he
unless-
basically,
Unless his personal experience was being on those properties and looking this way.
maybe he has been, and I could call him back and ask him if
Well, I
he's been to
think you
those.
should,
Would you want me to?
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Marino? Thank you. Just state your name once more, just for the record.
Yes, my name is Ross Marino.
And your address?
37 Seamus Lane and 49 Seamus Lane.
Okay, so that's 2.
Yes.
And you've been to those 2 houses?
Yes.
And you've been able to state an opinion about what happens with the view of this is built as is?
Unequivocally.
And you've been to the other, what other houses have you been to on
As
that
a-
street?
As a child, I rode my bike all around town nearly every day.
Well, we're
I
just
was-
talking about the houses in that neighborhood.
Absolutely. The street behind there, I've been to. We also just had a surveyor come out and do our land with the abutting neighbors behind us, like I had mentioned. I have been walking around the properties, looking at different views, and I was there this afternoon to take
Yeah,
photos.
did you form an opinion on whether or not other views would be obstructed?
Yes.
And what is that opinion?
I found that from standing where the other neighbors' houses were, they would also be have an obstructed view with the current proposed
And
house,
approximately how many houses in that neighborhood?
including our own.
Yes.
approximately 5 or 6.
All right, very good. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, if I could just comment.
Sure.
So Mr. Marino was on foot when he was looking. And those properties have to look over his house to see our house. So I would suggest that that is not the way to construct a neighborhood survey.
So can I just ask you one thing? So what is it, the Kenner case that says one view is not enough, correct?
Right.
Does it say if two are? Because they do own 2 homes. I mean, I don't know if the Kenner case says 2 is not enough. I'm just saying, I don't know if it says 2 is not enough. Because, I mean,
Well, in the
they
first
own
place,
2 homes.
they own 2 homes, but it's just one piece of property.
Well, it's
and they're
one
just
piece of
one
it's
property
one piece
owner.
of property with 10 houses on it.
I beg your pardon?
It's one piece of property here with.
No, I'm talking about the Marino's property.
Yeah, yeah.
They have 2 houses, but it's just a single piece of property.
Well,
So
I'm gonna-
I think the Kenner case is in force here, and I don't believe, my own sense is that Mr. Marino's walking around the neighborhood,
okay.
as guided by your questions, is a biased viewpoint.
Okay, so I have not met Mr. Reno before today, I just say that for the
I know
record.
that.
And, yeah, so you note we note your objection, that's fine. Does anyone else have any questions? No, so Paul?
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Eats seconds and votes yes.
I vote yes.
All votes yes?
Ginny?
Ginny votes yes.
As do I. Okay, so deliberations. Steve?
Well, I think there's things that can be done to this house to lower the height. I think it is going to affect the view from not only these neighbors, but from others. I think the view from the folks down the hill is going to be affected at 40 and 46, regardless of whether the owner owns those properties. I think something could be done to reconfigure the house. 3 bedrooms is not a necessity. It could be reconfigured with 2 bedrooms. There's already 1 bedroom in the basement. So I think there's things that can be done to lower this house and make it more compatible with the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. Lee?
Well, as I said earlier, I think the house is very attractive. My gut reaction when I first saw it was, wow, it's big. It seems much bigger than a lot of the other houses in the neighborhood. I appreciate Chris's efforts to erode the front, and I do like the front. And once again, I like the house. It's very tricky. I mean, I would encourage anything that can be done to make it lower.
Okay.
I'm not
Ed?
voting today, but.
Oh, thank you so much. Ed, if you could deliberate?
Well, I think the applicant has the right to put a second story on this property. The genie's sort of out of the bottle already as far as this development. I only saw 2 houses that are still 1 story. Maybe I missed one. This one, and I think it was 18. It's tough. It's a walkout basement in the back, so it's tough not to make it look smaller. You need to have room for a door there, and that's typical for a walkout basement. There's probably opportunity to reduce it, the height a little bit. It's pretty much on the exact footprint. But again, I don't know if reducing it by a foot or so is really going to make that much of a difference. So that's where I stand.
Mr. Nixon?
Well, something's missing here, and what's missing is our ability to judge heights of, one to the other and all that. So I hate to bring up this subject, but this is a perfect case where a 3D presentation of that neighborhood would answer so many of these questions that we have, and so don't the neighbors. I mean, I feel for the neighbors, but I also think they would need to see a 3D presentation to really say, well, yeah, okay, maybe it's not so bad, maybe it's all right. And short of that, I would have trouble voting in the affirmative for this tonight, because I just don't think I have enough information to be convinced that the house isn't, and let's take our criteria. To me, at the moment, it flunks number 2, compatibility of the size of the structure with the neighboring properties. I don't think it does. 5, impact of the scale mass on the neighborhood visual character and all that. As we've said, you know, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Let's find out. And number 6, compatibility of, well, I'll leave that one out. But those 2 are my hangups, and I could not vote yes tonight unless I saw something like a 3D presentation to answer these questions.
Ginny?
So I don't disagree with Ed that the genie's out of the bottle a little bit with that. There have been a lot of renovations to this cottage community. But, and I understand that the views, you're not entitled to a view, certainly a single homeowner. So there's that. But I do want to come back to I agree with Mr. Nixon, 2 and 5 I'm struggling with. I think the ask is too great for a cottage community. This is a cottage. And I understand, I agree that they want to go up, they want to make improvements, expand, and they have every right to do that. But I think a foot from the maximum height allowed in all of Chatham in a cottage community on a 9,100 square foot lot and asking for improvements to 2,757 square foot floor area is too big of an ask of the improvement to that. So that's, I think it doesn't meet 2 and 5.
Okay, Steve, did we go, no, we already, yes. Paul?
Well, the reason I asked the question about perspective in the neighborhood and the other dwellings has been part reflected by Mr. Nixon and his suggestion. I would feel more comfortable, I think, in voting affirmatively here if we had a better perspective on how this is actually going to look in the neighborhood, and perhaps with some information about where the and I'm thinking not so much just about the view from the individuals who have spoke tonight,
Right.
but also about the view of the building itself in the neighborhood. I walk that neighborhood fairly frequently. I'm familiar with the elevation on the right-hand side as you come up from the beach, and on the left-hand side, the lower areas that 48 and 46 are involved with. But I think that additional information may get you through a positive result here if that could be provided. But I'm reluctant to vote affirmatively, given the 2 criteria that have been cited, without some additional information.
And Mr. Veach?
Yeah, well, I do, is kind of as soon as the neighbors presented their viewpoint with respect to the blocking of views and things like that, realized that I felt like somewhat at a disadvantage because I didn't, had I had that information earlier, I would have gone, taken another look, getting another take on the neighborhood, but I haven't had a chance to do that, so that's okay. I think probably, given that what Chris has said about the his reasons for elevating the top of the foundation and the first floor, and the parking issues, I thought they're looking at, geez, parking is definitely an issue here in this area. And to achieve getting a couple parking spaces, I think is a very valuable contribution to that property and to the neighborhood. And looking at, the best I can do now, looking at the contours on a map that I have, and kind of, trying to, if I had to guess today, I think I would guess that this may not be as presented. Were we to approve it, it may not have the impact that some of the neighbors are fearing to that degree. Anyway, I mean, often views are, we've had, not in this instance, but sometimes here, we've had people present to us that they were losing views and things in other instances. And when I looked at the situation, I said, well, sometimes they have this much view and maybe this much of it is impacted. And so, I mean, I know that perceptions can do that. So I guess if I were all that considered, if I were voting tonight, which it looks like we may not be, I could support it, but I would rather have the opportunity to assess the situation with respect to impact on views myself and/or via a presentation that would help clarify it. I don't feel as, and this would be with respect to the neighbors on Seamus Lane across the street and things. With regard to the apparent 3 stories on the other side and whatever, Jay indicates that might be able to be officially resolved with some grading issues, and which would be fine. I can drive along, say Route 28 between Chatham and Orleans and look across Riders Cove and see any number of homes that, you can present that way. It's a function of the grade that the home's situated in. And in my experience or judgment, in a situation like this, when people are talking about views and vistas, that's very much about views and vistas of the water and the marshes and the various things, not so much turning and looking uphill at the houses uphill behind them. So I'm not as concerned about that viewpoint or that impact on the neighborhood views and vistas. It's more about on the other side. So I guess that's
Okay,
where I am.
well,
Thanks.
thank you. Thank you for your input. Mr. Riley?
Oh, Madam Chair, we'd like to request a continuance so we can obtain the information that we think will be helpful to the members.
And, well, first, let's see when that would be till, and then,
We'll need at least 6 weeks.
yeah, you're gonna get that.
March 13th?
I'm doing laundry that day, but I could probably make time.
We could go further into March if you'd like.
Well, we just, he's just pre-gaming for the 17th,
Okay, so
that's
March
all.
13th, does anybody object to that? Want to comment? No? Okay, so,
prefer the 27th?
no, I don't know.
March 27th?
Yeah, would you like that?
That's fine.
Okay, Paul?
All right, I'll move to grant the requested continuance to March 27, 2025.
Dave Veach seconds and votes yes.
Yes.
All votes yes?
Ginny votes yes.
As do I. It's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you
And
very
we're going to take a 5-minute recess.
So that has hurt in the sense that there's
All right, we are back, and we are now on application 24-141 with Mr. William Litchfield at 83 Old Mill Road, when Sarah's ready.
Application number 24-141, Next Wave LLC, care of William G. Litchfield Esquire, 330 Orleans Road, North Chatham, Mass. 02650. Owner of property located at 83 Old Mill Road, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 14I, Block 17, Lot 15A. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a non-conforming dwelling on a non-conforming lot via the demolition of the existing dwelling and garage and the construction of a new dwelling. The proposed dwelling will comply with all bulk and dimensional requirements of the bylaw, but is considered a substantial alteration and under the second except clause of Section 6 of Mass General Law, Chapter 40A. Such substantial alteration requires the grant of a special permit. The existing building coverage is 1,216 square feet, and the proposed building coverage is 2,815 square feet, where 2,850 square feet is the maximum allowed. The lot is non-conforming in that it contains 22,138 square feet, where 40,000 square feet is required in the R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, and Section 5B of the bylaw.
Attorney Litchfield, welcome. Just
Thank
state
you,
your
Madam
names.
Chair, members
Yep.
of the board, Bill Litchfield, here on behalf of Tom Blakely, who is here in the room. Tom, with his family, and his son is here as well. Tom and his family are longtime Chatham visitors. Also with us is our architect, Mike McKay of McKay Architects, and our engineer, Tom Stello, is here online. We thank you for coming back to 83 Old Mill Road, which you visited last May, I think, in regard to plans proposed by another applicant. When you went out there, depending how you went onto Old Mill Road, you may have noticed that the numerous potholes in the street are only a bit worse than they were in the spring. In any case, when Tom Blakely first approached me about buying this property, which was shortly after the plans from the spring were not well received and were ultimately withdrawn, I suggested that he watch the tape of the hearing and that he and Mike, his architect, take to heart the comments and concerns expressed by this board about the previous proposal, and that he also speak with neighborhood residents to understand some of their concerns. Tom Blakely did both, and the plans which we are presenting today are, I think you can find, both respectful of and responsive to those comments. It resulted in multiple versions and redesigns of the house prior to what you see today, in order to address your thoughts as well as the challenges of the site, but also to design something that was completely compliant with our zoning bylaw, which is here the case. As you know, the comparison you need to make is not to the prior plans, rather to what exists at present. I have considerable familiarity with this property because, as everyone, at least in the neighborhood, knows, the dogs and I walk by it at noon about every day and have done so for almost a quarter of a century. And as you know from your site visits, the existing structures which have multiple nonconformities, despite or regardless of those nonconformities, are on their last legs. There's a rather sad story as to how it got that way, into which there's no reason to go right now. But unlike the prior petitioner, Tom went ahead and purchased the house, notwithstanding the challenges he knew he would be facing. But I think important to keep in mind the overarching question that you will be answering, whether the proposal is substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood and to the neighbors than what now exists. So I'd like to ask Mike McKay, if I could, Madam Chair, to talk a little bit about the house he's designed, and then I'll go into the criteria.
Please, yes, thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. Michael McKay, I'm the project architect. I've worked with Tom on the house that they currently live in. And he asked me to come down to Chatham. I designed a house a couple of streets over and worked with Bill about 10 years ago. We were reminiscing, and the style of this house was something that Tom and his family liked, the one at Stony Hill. So we took some of the clues from that house and brought it into this. So the rendering or the rendered elevation, let's put it that way, it looks like it's a flat lot. As you know, the site drops off pretty dramatically from front to back. We have pushed the house back to the 40-foot setback requirement, requiring us to add quite a bit of fill in the front, but it also allows for the scale of it from the street to be more appropriate. It's 24'6" from the street to the top of the ridge. As the site, because it drops off the average grade, we are just under the requirement we're 29.7 feet, so we're about 4 or 5 inches below the requirement. But from the street and the views actually going on both sides, we're proposing to flatten out the yard and have the drop-off be in the rear. In the rear, I think that the question came up earlier, I'll just answer that question on the previous project. We are 31'3" from finished grade in the back to the top of the ridge, but the average grade just works out to 29.7 feet. It's a sort of a modified colonial style that we've designed. We think, appropriate. There's two bedrooms in the middle portion. We consider this to be a 1.5-story house because of the wings and the way the math works out on stories. But again, it drops off pretty dramatically, and we've done our best to work with that. But also, it's stepped back so far at 40 feet. The visibility from the street, it will appear like a smaller home. So I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. As to the criteria, as to adequacy of site, including building coverage and setbacks, all of the lots in the neighborhood are non-conforming, but our lot is one of the larger ones on the street. The site is certainly adequate for residential use, notwithstanding the existing street and sideline setback nonconformities. I think you can find that the site is adequate for construction of a new home, which again meets all dimensional requirements, setbacks, and height. That is, it's completely compliant as to zoning and designed, as I said earlier, to be responsive to neighborhood and ZBA concerns as to compatibility of size. On the third page of the handout, I have gone from halfway down Old Mail Road before the corner all the way to the end of Stony Hill. We have a larger lot, but the existing and rather tired structures are among the smallest, with living area of just 1,000 square feet and a footprint of 1,200 square feet, 5.5% of the lot. The coverage, the living area, and the gross floor area increase if you approve the special permit, but while it's a change from what's there now, it is not incompatible. It is smaller than some on the street which are immediate abutters. And as Mike indicated, it's moved about 35 feet further back from the street, eliminating the nonconformity, meeting the setback requirement, and it will be diminished in terms of its scale because of that. As to the extent of increase in nonconformity, Sarah enumerated the existing nonconformities. There is no increase in nonconformity, none whatsoever. Rather, this is totally conforming and all the deficiencies are eliminated. As to suitability of site, we have an older residential neighborhood developed in the 1950s, 1960s. There are no environmental issues. There is at present a cesspool. Replacing the cesspool with a 3-bedroom Title V septic system will be an obvious improvement. And very early on, I told Tom to consider the tree. That was a concern of some members. One member of the board characterized herself as a tree hugger, and I appreciate that. And I'll talk later about that, but Tom consulted with a certified arborist, had him examine the poplar tree, and he recommended that it be removed and replaced. As to scale sighting, mass views, and vistas, the existing house and garage have certainly seen far better days, have been neglected for a number of years, but there's no impact on views and vistas. If you approve the special permit, you can do so based on a finding that while plainly larger, the scale remains appropriate with cedar shingle sidewalls, architectural shingle roofing. Compared to the current structure, it will have a significant positive impact on the streetscape. And again, the mass is reduced by siting at 40-odd feet back from the street. As to compatibility of use, there's a slight change. We currently have no use. We have nominal residential use, but it will become actual residential use once this house is built. As to adequacy of water and sewer, there is town water, a cesspool, 3 bedrooms. The chair will read a letter from the health agent indicating that we will have a Title V for 3 bedrooms when we get to that point. The utilities and so forth are not at issue, and the Blakeleys are not known for being noisy, so that shouldn't be a problem. The question is, as you know, whether the proposed new house with greater but compatible gross floor area and living area is substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the frankly dilapidated structures on a non-conforming lot. Again, the house meets all the requirements of our bylaw and is part of a gradual evolution and improvement of this neighborhood. Given the impact on the surroundings of the current structure against which this must be compared, I think you can find the proposed house to be an improvement and certainly not substantially more detrimental. As Mike indicated, the design of the proposed house incorporates traditional elements such as the cedar shingle and was developed after a thorough review of the prior plans which were rejected. As I said, while the comparison you have to make isn't to those prior plans, I do want to address some of the comments and issues which arose at the hearing in May. As I mentioned, we had an arborist look at the tree. The last page of the handout is a copy of an email from Tim Kent, a certified arborist who examined the tree at Tom's request and who concluded that it should be removed and replaced with a better species. Yes, we did consider working around the tree, but after Tim's evaluation, we headed in a different direction. And for that matter, if you noted the vine-covered pine trees leaning out over Old Mail Road, something may have to be done about them as well. But the Blakeleys will be doing an appropriate landscaping. We considered your comments about how the prior proposal at 84 feet wide was wider than the new house at 41 Old Mail. That house is only 81 feet wide. This house is 72 feet wide. It is 12 feet more narrow than what was proposed, which you found to be too large. Mast and siding were a concern, and we understand that, so we decided to go to the expense of and engineering for bringing in fill to allow the house to meet the 40-foot setback from the street, as many of you thought would be preferable. On the site plan, Tom Stello has shown a top of bank line running right through the house. I don't know whether the backyard was once an old borrow pit or what it was, but as Mike has indicated, we'll be raising the elevation on the front west side by about 3 feet and a little bit on the east, but exercising appropriate and necessary caution to make sure that roof runoff doesn't go on to any neighboring properties, and that's specified in notes 12 and 13 of the site plan. We did consider doing a garage under, down in the back. It just wasn't feasible. It didn't work. One of the better aspects of the hearing in May is that thanks to Mr. Nixon, we now have a definition of bonus room, a room ready to be something else after the certificate of occupancy is issued. We don't have a bonus room. We are cognizant of that concern. We did not design one. You'll note in the site plan that Tom Stello has shown a, quote, conceptual future pool location. That's not because we've proposed or decided to build a pool. We haven't, but rather because Tom Stello asked me whether we should show a possible location for one, and I told him yes, because I expected the question might arise. And also because while I have a lot of faults, being disingenuous with you is not one for which I want to be known. So there is not a concrete plan. Concrete may be the wrong word. There's not a specific plan for a pool, but I wanted to show you where it might go in case it came up. Indirectly related, we did not ask the neighbors to sign a form letter. We think more of them and of you. And while we understand that there is not universal support for this proposal, I know the chair will allow me to respond to a negative comment, there are also a number of supportive letters which are not form letters. Perhaps most tellingly, the immediate abutters across the street and on either side, those who are most impacted by what's proposed as well as by what's there now, support this proposal. The proposed house has a gross floor area of 5,289 square feet.
previous proposal was 500 square feet larger at 5778. Will this house be larger than what's there now? Obviously, but it's completely compliant as to our zoning bylaw. And in regard to the latter, and as Mike indicated, we have a required grade plane average calculation, but even when accounting for the hole in the middle of the lot, we're below the maximum. The front elevation is just 24 feet from finished grade to the top of the ridge. But mass and scale are important considerations, so I want to take a final moment to acquaint you with another comparison, and that is a floor area ratio. Chatham, unlike a lot of towns, doesn't have a floor area ratio bylaw, but it's found in many Massachusetts communities, and I think it's a good measure of mass. It's obtained by dividing gross floor area by the lot size. Many land use scholars think it's a better measure of an important question: how big is the house going to be? It's expressed as a decimal. The higher the number, the greater the math. And it obviously takes into consideration coverage, the number of stories, and the lot size. May be something you want to look at in the future for analysis, but if you could look at it briefly now, please, by turning to the 4th page of the handout. There was some discussion at the last hearing about the disparity between north and south sides of Old Mail Road, because the lot size on the south side, the old Josephine Atkins subdivision, the lots are fairly small. But floor area ratio takes lot size into consideration. Again, the higher the decimal, the greater the mass. And if you look at that sheet, the right-hand column has the floor area ratio. Interestingly, this chart illustrates that there really isn't any red line distinction between the two sides of the street. The even house numbers are on the south or opposite side from this house. And in fact, based on floor area ratio, the 4 properties with highest floor area ratio are actually on the opposite side of the street. So if you approve this special permit, which I think and hope you can do, the floor area ratio of the completely compliant house we seek to build will be very much in keeping with its surroundings. It'll be at 0.24, where some on the street, literally across the street, are at 0.35. In summary, and I'm sure you'll appreciate that word, what's there now is unfortunately something of a detriment to the neighborhood. And what is proposed will be, in my opinion, and that of many, if not all, of the neighbors, an improvement. But in light of the criteria and the plans, especially in comparison to what's there now, what has been something of a neighborhood sore spot for quite some time, I think that you can certainly find that the proposed house is not substantially more detrimental. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody here on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak in favor of this application? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, I will read the correspondences. There are several, but none of them are particularly long. January 7th, 2025, we get a note from Judith Giorgio, our health agent. She reviewed the proposed plan for the property. It will not increase sewage flow. A new 3-bedroom septic system is proposed and appears to meet the requirements of Title V. Full plans and permit application will be required before final approval. Christina Bassett tells us on January 6, 2025, that the Department of Community Development Historical Commission reviewed the application and found the home not to be historically significant. Then we have a note from Jacqueline Crimmins, 110 Old Mill Road in Chatham. She does not support the construction of the new dwelling that's proposed. According to special permit criteria, she tells us that the plan will be detrimental and it does not meet criterias number 2, 3, 5, and 11 as set forth by the board. Old Mill Road is an R40 zone, but the site is on the southwest side of the street which ranges from 8,000 square feet to 13, approximately a quarter of an acre. The site size on the northeast side of the street ranges from 21,000 square feet to 30, approximately a half an acre. There is a disparity of site sizes. However, the 8 dwellings in direct proximity to 83 are relatively homogeneous in dwelling gross feet. It's ranged from 1,500 to 2,300 square feet with a median medium of 2,000 square feet. The proposed new construction would have a gross floor area of 5,699 square feet, including a screened porch. The proposed structure is not compatible to the neighboring properties as required in criteria 2. As for criteria 3, the current dwelling has a gross floor area of 2,107 square feet. There is approximately 2.5%, which is 2.5% the current gross floor area. So she's saying basically the house is 2.5 times bigger. Also, the new dwelling will border on the maximum building height of 30 feet, which is with the proposed height being 29.7. Most of the dwellings are 1.5-story capes or ranches. The proposed dwelling is not conforming in nature. Number 5 deals with the impact of scale, siting, and mass, and visual character. The scale and mass visually of the proposed dwelling will be out of character with the neighborhood. Number 11 deals with visual impact. Not only is the gross floor area out of character with the neighborhood, but the gambrel style is also out of character. Also notice is the proposed pool, in my opinion, will negatively impact the street. And noted by the author, the property at 41 Old Mill is considered an outlier with a site size of 45,000 square feet and a dwelling setback approximately 154 feet from the road. The proposed dwelling at 83 will not be homogeneous with the neighborhood and will not enhance the neighborhood character. It will be an overbuilt gambrel style, out of character with the dwellings. Please do not approve this application. Next, we have a shorter note from Kathleen Edwards from January 8th, 2025. She wishes to add further thoughts to her letter in support that she had already sent at about 83. The proposed gambrel roof design is attractive, very common among new construction. She thinks it'll fit well in the neighborhood as it fits in other areas of the town. Further, abutters asked that the board limit its approval to proposals that keep the same or nearly the same height, footprint, and square footage of the existing house. In my opinion, that's untenable. It's not worth it for any family to gut and rehab a house or to build a house similar in height, footprint, and square footage. It would make no financial sense. If this proposal is turned down, I believe it'll be years before anything happens at 83 Old Mill, except slow decay of what's there now. And that's Kathleen Edwards, 62 Old Mill Road in Chatham. Debbie and Randall Howard tell us on January 8th, 2025, that they reside at 101 Old Mill Road and are immediate abutters to 83. They saw the plans. They think it'll be an improvement. They understand that the proposed house meets all the requirements of the zoning law, and they're writing in support. It's appropriate, much-needed change, and will not be detrimental to the neighborhood. They hope it's approved. Then we have a note from Mary Ellen Marsden, and she lives at, she's the owner of 26 Old Mill, home address 9 Silver Birch Lane in Lincoln, Mass. They've reviewed the proposed construction of 83 Old Mill and are not supportive of it. We hope the board will request modifications that bring it to a size and style that are more comparable to the other homes in the neighborhood. Ann and Sean Roski write on January 8th, 2025. They're in support of the petition for a special permit at 83 Old Mill. As neighbors, they're in favor of the proposal. They think it'll be a significant improvement to the neighborhood. They talked to the owners about the plans, and they modified some aspects of it to address some concerns. As we understand it, he has moved the house back the street to eliminate nonconformity away from the street. And while the new house will be larger than what's there now, replacing the existing house with what has with this proposal will not be detrimental to the neighborhood. Barry and Violet D. Silette from 41 Old Mill Road write on January 8th that their wife, he says, Barry writes that he and his wife are year-round residents, and they're writing in support for the application. They're in favor of the proposal, believe the new home will enhance the neighborhood. 7 years ago, a similar home was removed from our property at 41, and my home was built. Our neighbors are thrilled with our home improvements we have made to the property. enhance the neighborhood tremendously, and we feel that Mr. Blakely's proposed new home will enhance the neighborhood as well. And Mr. Blakely's proposed home is larger than what's currently on the property, but is considerably larger than what was on 41 Old Mill 7 years ago. We don't see this as a negative or detrimental to the neighborhood. Quite frankly, we see it as a positive. We hope the board will permit this application. Next, we have a note from Matthew Gavin and Allison Gavin from January 8th, 2025. Their family owns 80 Old Mill since 1996. They're close abutters to 83. They're pleased to learn that a new and completely conforming house will be proposed. It's probably obvious to your visit that the existing house is in serious need of replacement. A simple renovation is highly unlikely. And it would, even if that was to occur, it would result in a continuing house located a mere 6 feet from Old Mill where 40 feet is required. Instead, Mr. Blakely has gone out of his way to develop plans for a house which will meet the requirements of the bylaw. All the lots in the street are non-conforming, but Mr. Blakely has designed something that is respectful of the surroundings as well as the bylaw. This thoughtful proposal is responsive to the comments made during the previous hearings and will fit into the neighborhood. They're aware of the broad questions you consider, and one is whether it's substantially detrimental to the neighborhood. The building will not be, and in our perspective, it would exist is detrimental to the neighborhood, and they hope we approve it. Is there anybody here on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak against this application or has a specific question? Seeing none. Questions from the board? I guess we should go one by one with this complicated application. Dave Veach, questions?
Yeah, I did note some, and it's not a huge thing, but I did note some difference in gross floor area numbers, and some of that revolved around the screen porch. I got a little bit lost in the rabbit hole looking at the elevation drawings. And so my question would be, is there a roof proposed over the screen porch?
Yes, there is.
Because I could not pick that up in the drawings in any way that I could see. But, so just say that was somewhat confusing, but I understand that. So that would be included
Yes.
in gross floor area. So that changes some of the numbers slightly, but not in a significant way.
And part of coverage, but not part of living area.
Right, it's
They're
not
different,
living
yeah.
area, but it is coverage because it has a roof over it. At the same time, just as a aside, I also, there's a, I was looking for that, and I was looking for the roof, and I was looking at the elevations, and I was having a hard time getting them to add up in my mind. And at the same time, I'm going to say the mudroom, same thing, I didn't see a roof showing on the elevation drawings that matches the other drawings. So just something to look at, take a look at.
Thank you, Mr. Veach.
Thanks.
Questions,
I don't
Ed?
have any others.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
No questions.
Mr. Nixon,
No questions.
Mr. Semple,
No questions.
and Lee?
Quick question. You probably have it stated here on the drawing, or the elevations and the plans. It looks like a shingle house.
Yes.
Hopefully, I'm going to just make a little request that it's traditional shingles that are
Yes.
going to weather nicely and not the
White
dips.
cedar
They're white
sidewalls.
cedar.
White cedar, thank you.
Yes.
It probably was in there, I just didn't see it. Thank you.
And Steve?
What were the difficulties with making a drive-under garage in the rear of the house?
The site and the hole is the essential issue. The driveway would have taken up, and Tom Stella may be able to chime in because he is here, or maybe Mike McKay.
I could start.
Yeah, if I could.
We completed a full set of drawings with the garage under. We tried, and we had more negative feedback from other professionals that were saying it just doesn't work. More paving, more, more driveway, too steep, extensive retaining walls, much more than we have now, and it just, Again, we had a full, this is our third design. We had another design that kept the tree. Again, we were told the tree was not appropriate, was dying, forget it. So that's where this is our third full set of drawings. I apologize for the confusing, because we have pushed and pulled, and we certainly need to tighten up our drawings for permit, but that was the reason. It was too steep.
I appreciate that explanation, because that would, if you remove the garage or put it someplace else, that would reduce the visual impact by about 20 feet or 24 feet.
We did
So-
get rid of the breezeway that
Right.
was suggested from the prior application, but we understand the point, we did try, Mr. DeBoer.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Thank you.
And Ginny, questions?
Thank you for addressing the tree. I was going to be a question, or one of my questions was, can you save the tree? I read Mr. Kent's summary, and I do get that, but I mean, it's just such a shame because it provides such shade, and it's 200 years old. But I understand the location of it. It's so tricky. I really wasn't optimistic that you could save it. At the historic hearing, September 17th, the owner, Mr. Blakely, said that he was very interested in neighbor feedback, and had taken steps to try to understand that when this was all being put together. So is the response to some of the negative neighbor feedback that we heard?
Well, I can, this might be an opportunity to respond, if I could, to that.
Sure.
We know the chair always wants to offer rebuttal time.
I do.
But there was essentially one letter. The second letter was from someone whose home was immediately behind my office, not an abutter to an abutter to an abutter to an abutter, but as far away as I am. So I'm not going to comment too much on that. The first letter, frankly, seemed to be fighting the last war. We didn't use 41 Old Mail Road as a comparison, and we were sort of accused of it because it is further away. The letter writer talked about Tommy LeBlanc's concern for the pool. He's the owner of 75. I will tell you very candidly, Mr. LeBlanc is related to someone in this room, and I've known him for most of his life. I'm older than he is. Before I agreed to represent Tom Blakely, I asked Tommy LeBlanc if he would be okay with this, and he said yes. So the letter writer said that Mr. LeBlanc has a problem with the pool. First of all, there is no pool, and secondly, I wouldn't be here if Tommy LeBlanc didn't want me to be here. So I don't know if that's responsive to your question. It does show my late-in-the-day ire over letters that sometimes aren't factual. Beyond that, there was another letter, as you know, which you received in your packet, which was withdrawn because the letter writer who wrote in opposition to it was apparently somehow misled. I've not spoken to that woman. I've known her for years as well. I've not spoken with her because it is difficult for me being in the neighborhood. I hope that responds.
Thank you. We were told at the last hearing that it couldn't be moved back. Yeah, I know you watch the hearing, and obviously it can be, you're doing that. But it's a matter of the fill. So just so that I understand, the fill is, I was looking at the elevation changes too. There's fill being brought in even up to the street by like 4 or 5 feet. So you're raising, I just want to make sure I understand the height, because you are going to within inches of the max. And part of that is the new fill that you're bringing in.
Well, a couple of things. We're putting about 3 feet of fill on the left or west side. And then it will, because the drop-off begins very close to the existing house. So it will then taper back to the rear, as shown there. He's got the elevation lines. So it's, right now, it's about where it's going to be 66 feet. Right now, it's about 63. There is much less on the right or east side. And we spoke to the Harwoods, who are at 101 on the east side, and there's going to be a retaining wall on the left side, which is going to prevent any runoff onto Mr. LeBlanc's property to the left or west. So there is fill, but not a lot of it. And yes, we are at the rear, we have a taller home, but at the front, it's 24 feet and change. 24 feet
At the front.
on the all-mail road side. Yeah, and there's no, and I think I neglected to respond, and Tom, please correct me if I'm wrong, Tom Stello, but there is no fill in the front yard. Well, a little landscaping, but I mean, the street elevation isn't going to change.
Okay, yeah, there is a little in the front yard. Okay, so can you restate what that 24 feet was again? Sorry.
The 24, it's 24'6" from the street, from the sidewalk or the street. And that elevation, you can see it, it just has 67.5. We actually designed a mud sill, pretty common detail, and it's shown on the civil drawings, the site drawings, where the wood framing is actually recessed into the foundation so that we can still get some foundation exposure, but also keep the height low. But it's basically at the same elevation as the street. The grade at the street is just about within inches of, the grade at the house is just about the same as at the street.
Maybe you'll know this, maybe you won't. Is it fair to say that the proposed house is 5 feet taller, 5.5 feet taller than the current 1.5-story house?
That sounds reasonable. Let me pull out the, sorry, don't worry about it. He's probably got the, frankly, I haven't spent a lot of time looking at the proposed house, but, I mean, the existing house.
You know, I'm asking because it's deceiving to say it's going to be inches from the maximum when it is because of the average grade, but I'm trying to get to the visual.
If you're standing on Old Mail Road, it's going to be 24 feet and a couple inches high, I guess is the best way to explain it.
The engineer's hand's raised, so. should
Yeah,
we ask-
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Engineer, please go ahead.
Hi, Tom Stello from TS Land Survey. I can confirm that it would be 5 feet higher than what's existing. Oops,
I'm sorry, did you say you can or you can't?
I can
You can,
confirm. So
okay.
the proposed is about 5 feet higher than the existing ridge.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, great. I think everybody got their questions. Paul, did I? Yep.
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds and votes yes.
Yes.
All votes yes.
Jeannie votes yes.
As do I. Okay, deliberations. Lee?
Okay, thank you. Well, excuse me, I like it. Initially, I struggled a little bit with criteria number 2, but I think I appreciate first of all, it's attractive, very attractive. It's a great street. I appreciate substantially moving it back from the setback of the road. I think when doing that, you have plenty of space for some interesting landscaping that will really also help with the mass. If I were voting tonight, I would be in favor. I think it's a really nice improvement. It is a very modest street, but I think this design with some landscaping will be fine.
Okay, David Veach?
Yeah, at first I thought, gee, deja vu all over again, and you know, started looking at this, and certainly we're not, and looking at the previous plan that we had some difficulties with, and driving down the street, I mean, boy, trying to gauge how this will read on the street. And I guess, I think, I mean, certainly it's larger than any other of the, until you get up to the corner of Stony Hill Road. It's larger than most of the other homes on the street. So I think what's really important here that I didn't really try to visualize as well as I could have is that increasing that setback to meet the 40 feet takes it well out of the line of buildings that form the wall of the street, if you will. And so that's, I'm hopeful, because I'd like to support this, and I'm hopeful that that will be enough, and again, to whatever they decide to do in terms of landscaping, in the front, to help soften any kind of any perception that it's not fitting the setting. And like many projects, I think when it's all said and done and everything blends in, that yes, it's still gonna be probably the largest house on the street, but I don't think it's gonna stand out in a negative way. And then the only other thing I would say, which is, this is totally an aside, but I didn't realize that, that tree, that I had brought it up the last time, was a white poplar. I mean, it's true what the arborist has said about the roots. I have some of those trees in my yard, and the roots chase all the way around the building, and is actually kind of a problem. So in some ways, the size of the tree, the loss of it is not good, but I think it's going to be good overall for all involved. So I can make the determination, in my mind, that this proposal is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood, and I actually don't think it's, I mean, it is larger mass-wise, but I don't think it's going to be, I don't think, I can find that I think it's going to meet the scale, sighting, and mass criteria that we're review. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Ed? Deliberations, if you were voting.
I'm not voting, but when I went back and watched the hearing, and one of the asks was to change the two-car garage to a one-car garage, because we just felt that it didn't fit in with the neighborhood, and I still feel it doesn't fit in with the neighborhood. It's just too big. As an illustration, there's a large sign on the property of the development company, whatever. And I look at that sign, and that sign does not fit in the neighborhood, that huge sign. And I'm thinking, it's similar to what the house is gonna be like. I just don't think, I think a one-car garage for that neighborhood would be more appropriate, I think.
David Nixon.
I want to thank you for listening to us and doing your homework. That's very much appreciated. No plan is perfect, but boy, this one works for me. It really does. And I think, as Dave pointed out, by pushing it back, the perspective that would have been very different had it been 10 feet off the road or 15 and whatnot. And then I like your use of the slope in the back and the development of the house out back too. And as Lee said, you've got a lot of room, which is really great. So this house is conforming. What's there now is, whew. So it would be, I mean, you could put a trailer there and you'd easily say this is not substantially more detrimental, really. So I thank you. This helps the community.
Thank you.
That street, and I'll be voting yes.
All right, thank you very much. Virginia Fenwick.
Agree with some of those points. It is conforming. It is improving in that regard. I am struggling still, though, with the size. I think that there is evidence that the owner listened to the hearing and made some changes, but I don't know that it's enough. For example, the prior house was 84 feet in length, and this one's 73. So that's 11 feet, that's shorter. But to Ed's point, still got the two-car garage, still has the largest gross floor area if you take out the two on Stony Hill, which I think on your list are kind of outliers. But The square foot, the gross floor area only decreased by 79 square feet. That's not a big change. The height, thank you for helping me address the height, because I'm more comfortable with that now. The building coverage proposed is actually increasing from what was presented last time. But the big thing is the 40-foot setback. I agree with Mr. Veach and Mr. Nixon that that takes it off of the street a bit. But really, and I counted them again today, the last time I did this, 16 out of 20 homes on that street are either single or 1.5 story. So this house is just going to be so massive compared to the other houses in the neighborhood. So I am struggling because you have made efforts to cut things back. I don't know if it's enough. And then about the pool, I appreciate the extra feedback, Mr. Litchfield, on that, because I did not like the fact that the pool, without that, the neighbor commenting, the fact that that pool there will be in his front yard. I know that that's not what we're evaluating here today, but I just wanted to make that comment. So those are my deliberations.
Okay, thank you. Steve?
Well, I think others have said it, thank you for considering making some reductions in some of the sizes, especially the width of the house. It's, I think 11 feet is fairly substantial. So I appreciate that. The one thing I wanted to say is I appreciate you putting this outline of the setbacks on the drawing so you can see exactly where the house is going to be fairly easily. It's highlighted in red, so it's easy to see where the house is oriented on the property, so I appreciate it. Makes things a lot easier. I think moving the house back, the 40 feet is a big improvement, and I think Lee said that, even with some well-placed trees and landscaping, you can even diminish the perspective of the height of the house even further, because the taller trees would make the house look lower, and it may fit in a little bit easier to the neighborhood. The garage, I'm kind of hung up on the garage also. That's why I asked about moving it around to the back of the house. But, if that's going to create more of a problem than it's worth, then I guess so be it. So I think I would approve things as they are.
If you were voting. Paul?
Well, we spent a great deal of time on this property the last time around, and I think that this design has taken into consideration a number of the comments that were made at that last hearing. And I think that the increase in the setback from 20 feet to 40 feet makes a big difference. I think it makes it possible for this to blend in a little bit better. But the neighborhood isn't changed, and it's probably going to have more bigger houses coming in there. And I think that when you consider that the last proposal had much more width to it and was much more like 41 in that property, it seems to me that this is a great improvement. You've taken that into consideration. So overall, I would say this is not going to be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. So I would approve of it.
So I would just, I agree with Ginny, and I also agree with Mr. Dixon to, as far as all the changes that you made, and it is conforming, and that's all great. But when I say I agree with Ginny, I think that this house, is pretty massive for the neighborhood. And the one thing that I'm just wondering is that the umbrella-style dormer that we see there, what if that was just a regular doghouse dormer? Maybe that would look a little bit more capey, so to speak, and not as massive. And I'm just throwing that out there as a possibility.
Thank you. We certainly looked at every different design style, and I'm not sure if it will diminish it. I think the comments, during my presentation, I almost brought up the fact that it's 40 feet back. 40 feet is significant.
No,
and it's
I know
going- the
that, but I'm
scale
just
of the house is
talking,
gonna
I'm
go
just
to-
talking about
so-
the mass of the
Yeah,
house.
no, I understand the massing.
Yeah, and that's all I'm talking about right now. I think
Yeah.
it's great, it's all conforming. You're away from the neighbors, you're away from the street, you get an A for that. but the house is still massive compared to other houses on the street. And I just thought that, looking at that Gambrel-style dormer, if it was different and it was more Cape-style, then maybe it wouldn't look as massive. And so that's what I would vote yes if that would, if you're looking for my input.
If I could, Madam Chairman.
Yeah, please.
My math skills are limited. I believe that there are 4 affirmative votes, perhaps more.
I wasn't sure about Ms. Fenwick, so
Well,
let's hear from her first, and then we'll go back to me.
What do you want to hear? How I
I
would vote?
I didn't get your comment, your deliberations as a definite yes. Did I miss something?
No, I said I think it's,
Oh, you did?
I think it's too large.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, I'm not going
I
senile
mean, I
quite
did
yet.
say I was struggling with that. They've
Yes.
made some great improvements, but I still think that it's 16 out of 20 homes. And I know that the neighborhood is in, but several homes there have recently been updated, and they are still small, modest.
Right. So you have 3, and now you're looking for 4, and we're on the fence, so help us out.
I guess if I could respond to that.
Please, yeah.
In terms of this being a precedent for further changes in the neighborhood, first, as you know, nothing you do is a precedent for anything else. Secondly, because of coverage limitations, the smaller lots on the south side of the street at 10,000 square feet are limited in how much they can change. The consideration, I mean, certainly if the board would allow, if the board approves the special permit, if Mr. Briggs could be authorized to approve a reconfiguration of the front dormer without returning to you, if that can be done to Mr. Blakely's satisfaction by Mr. McKay,
We're going to hear from our Chair Emeritus.
Oh, that's a great suggestion, but I don't think that's Mr. Briggs's job, and it'd be very unfair to put him in that spot.
we would certainly, and I appreciate that, we would certainly consider it. We would, if the board wanted to nominate, as the Historical Commission does, a single member to make the determination. Our preference is to go forward under the notion that compared to what is there now, this is not substantially more detrimental, particularly when you look at the floor area ratio, which of course can't change on the south side of the street because coverage is limited there.
No, I understand what you're saying. You want to do a straw vote?
That would be very much appreciated.
Okay, let's do a straw vote. Ginny, and we'll let you go last, because we'll give you a second to have the Jeopardy music play in your head. Mr. Veach?
Well, I think I would support it, and I just to weigh in a little bit. In my reading of the plans, the way that this has been drawn, and so it's not really that's a dormer on the front. There's a consistency of that roof style on the main part of the building that faces the street, but also in the cross piece, front and back. So I actually think it would be somewhat awkward to try to redesign one piece of that. So that's just said. Anyway, I can support it as is. I'm not sure that would be a significant difference in effect.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nixon, you support it?
It's such an improvement over what there is now that I would support it, absolutely.
Okay. And Paul?
Yes, I approve it. I support it as well.
And Ginny?
Can I deliberate a little more?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
It would be an improvement over what's there now because the house is, but someone else could buy it or make a change to it and just scale it down a little bit. So I think I don't believe that house is going to stay there if this gets disapproved. So I kind of don't really buy that argument. I think it's too large for the neighborhood. I think great efforts have been made, but only changing the size of it by 79 square feet, That's still the argument, the conversations we had the last time about what we didn't like. And by the way, almost every member didn't like it last time because it was so massive. I'm sorry, what did you say? No. Oh. Okay, so I think I would say no.
All right, so I think that the mass of the house is too much for that neighborhood. And that's why I was trying to work out a way that the massing would be cut back. So I'm wondering if you'd be willing to reconfigure that front in some way to make the mass, not look, make it look more, appropriate for that neighborhood.
Well, we will certainly do what is necessary to obtain 4 affirmative votes. I'm not sure that reconfiguration of the front dormer it's not going to change the mass. And again, we are 40 feet back from the street, so that if you're standing there or driving there, I mean, first of all, if you're heading from Stony Hill Road, you can't see the house anyway because of the hedge that's on that side. And being set 40 feet back from the street, I'm not sure anyone is going to see that dormer driving up and down the street.
Well, it's not a matter of the dormer, but you know how we often talk about how it breaks up the mass of a house when there's doghouse dormers in the front. Do you agree? Don't we do that often?
Doghouse dormer versus a shed dormer, there is a difference. Certainly, there's a very large shed dormer on the house 2 doors down to the left.
I mean, 90% of the houses are much smaller, so but I do see your point, whether or not it's substantially more detrimental than what's there now. And so I guess I'll vote yes, but very reluctantly. And I don't like the look of it at all.
Reluctance is appreciated almost as much as our 4 affirmative votes.
Yeah. All right, so Paul?
I'll move to approve the application as submitted with the condition that all construction activity and vehicles shall be contained on site or at a neighboring property with the permission of the property owner. Between June 30th and Labor Day, no exterior construction will be allowed, no work shall be permitted on the weekends, and construction activity between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. only.
Dave Each seconds and votes yes.
I vote yes.
Paul votes yes.
Ginny votes no.
I vote yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time and
All right,
efforts.
yes, thank you. And what time is it? Oh, we need a motion.
I'll move to
Motion to
adjourn.
adjourn.
Dave Each seconds and votes yes.
Ed?
Ed votes yes, and my
Dave?
yes counts.
Yeah,
What time is it?
no, it's time to vote yes to adjourn.
Yes.
All vote yes.
He votes yes.
Steve votes yes.
Ginny votes yes.
As do I, and now what time is it? It looks like it's
6:48 PM.
6:48 PM. Good night, Chatham.